So in this video, we're going to go over a couple practice problems for our significant figures worksheet. I'll do a few of each. They shouldn't be too hard, these problems, as long as you have the notes out. I would definitely recommend having the notes out when you do this, specifically for the multiplication and division. They tend to be the hardest. So let's take a look. For addition and subtraction, they're very easy. You're just going to line up the numbers based off the decimal point. So in this case, it's going to be 10.12 and 4.140. Draw a line. In this case, we're adding. So now you're just going to type this into your calculator and see what your calculator gives you. So it's going to give you 0.6241, decimal point there. And here's what's going on. This number here is blank. In other words, we don't know if it's a 0 or not. It's an unknown. So because it's an unknown, we can't guarantee that it's accurate. So therefore, we have to remove that entire column. Now, it happens to be a 0, so like no big deal. But in your final answer, it does matter if you include that 0. What we're saying here is this column can't be guaranteed to be accurate because there is a number here. We just don't know what it is. So we're removing it from the answer. So your final answer, 0 obviously rounds down. Your final answer will be 14.26. And that's the final answer, not 14.260, because then you're telling me that 0 is a real 0, and this is saying it's not, or it might not be. And so therefore, since it might not be, we can't guarantee it, we remove it. Subtraction's done the same way. 50 decimal, 9.1, subtract, we end up with 40.9. And then this blank, we don't know what it actually is, so we have to remove this column. The 9 will round up, and so our final answer will be 41 is our final answer there. All right, and I would include the decimal. It actually wouldn't really matter because it would be two significant figures either way. So with or without the decimal, but make it a habit if it's in the number to keep it for addition and subtraction. Now let's do multiplication and division. They tend to throw people off. I'm only going to do two problems. So with multiplication and division, the first step, you have to use the present absent rule. Just to review, if the decimal point is present, we count in that direction starting with our first non-zero. And if it's absent, we count in that direction starting with our first non-zero. So let's look at these three numbers. We're going to multiply them together. This number, 30, there's no decimal. That means I start counting on the right, going to the left. My first number that isn't a 0 that I come across is this 3, meaning 1 sig fig. So the 3 is accurate, the 0 is not. The next two numbers, the decimal point is present, so I start on the left side, counting in this direction. 2 sig figs, 3 sig figs. So now what I do is I'm going to multiply these three things together and just see what the calculator spits out. It spits out 236.64. So now I have to round this number because that's not my final answer. So the rule for multiplication and division is you round your answer to have the least amount of significant figures used in the problem. We multiplied three numbers together. The least amount of significant figures out of these three numbers is the 30. It only had 1 sig fig. In other words, one digit was accurate. The 0 in the 30 was not accurate. It wasn't guaranteed. So therefore, since only one digit was guaranteed to be accurate in this number, we can only guarantee the accuracy of our answer to one digit. So I count one digit in from the left, I draw my line, and that's where I'm going to round. The reason I go from the left is because the 2 represents the number the best. The number is 236.64. The 2 is in the hundredths place, which is the largest column here, so it's the bulk of the number. So I keep that one. So now it's going to become 200, no decimal. Again, if I plug the decimal in, then based off my present absent rule, I am saying that these zeros are actually zeros. If I leave the decimal off, now I'm dealing with the absent rule, I'm counting from the right to left, I'm saying that these zeros are placeholders, that they are not in fact zeros. And we know they're not zeros. We know they're at least a 3 and a 6, right? It could be, they're probably higher, but they're at least a 3 and a 6. They're not actually zeros, and that's why we don't include the decimal on that. Let's do multiplication. Let's do division real quick. So we know this answer, big giant number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sig figs, 2 sig figs. And when I hit my calculator, you don't need a calculator for this because I'm dividing by 1. I get that. but I need to round my answer to have 2 significant figures. So I keep the 2 biggest on the left, 7 rounds the 2 up to a 3, and so my answer, I see this a lot, 13. Then you get it wrong, okay? Because the number's not 13. It was 127,500 was the number. So it's really the 127,000 is going to round to 130,000 because I need to keep these numbers in the right column. If you notice, every number I left off should have a 0 next to it, except these, because if I included the decimal, then I would be changing the amount of significant figures. So my final answer, 130,000, no decimal. Because again, by leaving the decimal off, I'm saying these zeros are not accurate. If I put the decimal on, I'm saying that they are, which is not true. That concludes this. This is the practice problems. There's a front and back. When you are done, there will be an answer key for you to check to make sure you are doing these right.